Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Virtual College Exploration for All Illinois Students, sponsored by the Illinois Association for College Admission Counseling and StriveScan. Thank you for joining us. A few housekeeping items, announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists can't see you or hear you. This is just one of the many different sessions happening, so be sure to check out the full schedule at IACAC.org. This presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same website, IACAC.org. So with that said, I would like to turn it over to our presenters.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is April Lynch. I am an Associate Director of Admission with Syracuse University, and I am joined by my colleagues tonight, Heather Boggs-Chase from Miami University and Betsy Stevens from the University of Pittsburgh. We are very excited to get to talk to you tonight about choosing your college major. So we will just get started then. First of all, choosing your college major, we want you to take a deep breath. I know this seems like a really big choice and something that takes a lot of thought and deliberation as you do it. But honestly, you don't need to know what you want to do for the rest of your life right now. We all, colleges, we understand that you guys are 17, 18 years old, and we don't expect this from you. So try not to stress about that. Think of college as a time for you to explore, to learn about new things, to try a new class just because it sounds interesting. You don't know what's really going to spark your interest or become something that becomes a passion for you. There are honestly careers that haven't even been created yet. So don't lock yourself into an idea right now because the future is wide open. And honestly, if you have more than one area of interest, think about double majoring or adding a minor to your courses, because finding an area of interest will really help you in the long run when you are looking for jobs. You can maybe be really excited and passionate about the thing that you end up doing as a career just because you started with one class or you attended a lecture or heard a guest speaker talk about something that was really very interesting to you. Now, some questions to ask yourself as you start thinking about choosing your major. What classes in high school have you enjoyed the most? You know, which ones make you lose track of time? The ones that you sit in your class and you're just so absorbed and interested in the subject that you don't even realize that time has passed. Maybe some activities. What have you done that you just really enjoy? Is it something to do with writing, or maybe reading or math, or it's involving athletics or music? All of these can be turned into jobs and majors and careers. What sort of articles do you read in your free time? What really sparks an interest and makes you, again, become absorbed in the subject area that you're looking at? How about what are some personal characteristics of yours? Are you creative? Do you enjoy music? Do you enjoy creating art pieces? Or do you really like structure? You would like things laid out and following a certain path. Do you find yourself getting excited when you're planning to run your own business someday and trying to plan out different ways that that could work? Are you self-motivated? Do you need a little help from someone nudging you to get going? So really start thinking about, what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? What challenges you? What excites you when you're doing that? And then also think about what makes you proud. You know, what are the accomplishments that you've had that you want to continue doing in the future?
Hi guys, next up I want you to think about what your current interests are. What do you like to do not only when you're in school, but when you're out of school? If you do dance, or if you are interested in the History Channel, or if you can't, you know, put down the mailers that come to you every day about the Steppenwolf Theater or a variety of theater areas that come into your mailbox. You know, what kinds of things pique your interest. It doesn't have to be academic. It's cool if it is, but it doesn't have to be. Just in general, you know, what excites you and what kind of areas sound really cool when you think about them, you know, continue to think about them. You don't just ignore and move on. Think about those industries you like, types of things you like to do on weekends, all of that stuff makes up a really good picture of what your major may look like someday. And then continuing on, what are your dreams? You know, what types of things would you like to picture yourself doing in 10 years? You know, do you picture yourself being at a desk doing something? Do you picture yourself out in the world, being an active participant in things? Do you see yourself working with your hands, or do you see yourself behind a camera or on a stage? You know, so many different possibilities and so many different ideas of careers you can take, but also just types of things that you can continue to think about doing and think about spending every day doing. Keep in mind though that, you know, you're not going into one job for the rest of your life. You're thinking about a career path long-term and a major that will lead you down a bunch of different paths. Continuing on as well, are there any interesting jobs that your family members do? Maybe some of you come from families where your parents or grandparents have owned a business and they're talking to you about taking over the business. Is that something that interests you, or vice versa? Is it really not something that interests you? Is there something that you've seen aunts and uncles do that you wanted to do? I know when I was younger, my aunt was on television news and we could watch her every morning, you know, and so I always thought that was super cool and was kind of interested in doing that. It's not to say that that's the direction I went, but initially that was a career I explored because it was something that I saw her do and saw realistically come to life. It's amazing how sometimes when you're exposed to things, you know, your careers can really take shape, and your major can too.
And there'll be a few more questions you might ask yourself when you're trying to choose a major. So what are you good at and what are your strengths? So I think you might initially jump to academics, obviously, because your major in going to college will involve educating yourself. So are you good at writing? Are you good with data, music? Are you good with math? So the example, you're very good at math. Here might be some examples of majors you might want to choose. Applied mathematics, maybe you want to be a math teacher going into engineering, information sciences, or maybe something in the business field. You know, we start with academics, but then we transition over to what are some things that you like to do. So these would be things that are maybe outside of the classroom. So things that you might do in your free time. And I think when you're choosing a major or choosing different things you want to study, you want to take this into consideration because, you know, the end goal is that you'll love what you do. So try to combine what you're good at and what you can do. So some examples, you like to travel. So maybe you'd be interested in studying a foreign language, which would allow you to travel the world, history, political science, art history as well. And the last question we'd like you to consider, what are some of your personal characteristics? And Heather's going to touch on some quizzes that are out there that you can take to kind of help you discover who you are as a person, and according to the internet, the world out there, some research that's also been done in books. But are you reserved? Are you a team player? Do you like to work independently? Are you more of an outgoing person? So if you're an outgoing person, some possible options might be journalism or going into marketing because you like to talk to people and you're good at selling things. The education field, performing arts, just to name a few.
Okay, this is the fun stuff, you guys. I think for all of us, as we talked about this presentation, we looked at this slide and we're like, oh, this was such a fun thing that we did when we were younger and starting out in our career fields. So this is called the Myers-Briggs test. And everyone that takes this comes up with a personality type. And so it's a super interesting look into your personality. This is a really brief summary of a really extensive test. So we put this up here so that you could play around and look and see maybe, just quickly what your personality type would be and how that relates to jobs that you might connect with or, feel like it are a good fit for you. The trick with many of these personality tests and different things is that, of course, it's describing your personality and then it's matching you up with similar personality types. And I think what we all have to remember, because I think as the three of us discussed this panel and talked about taking these tests, we said, oh my gosh, I'm not doing anything like what that described. That's really funny that that's my descriptor. But we all decided that, in theory, what these tests do is put you into a category of jobs where you would be working with people like you. And for some people, that's a great fit, right? For some people, they want to work with other people like them, and they want to be in an environment where everybody kind of either is extroverted or is introverted or, is very scientific or very emotionally driven by things. But then some people think like, no way, I don't want to be surrounded by other people like me. So sometimes when you take these tests, you look at the result and you think, no, that's not for me at all. And I don't want you to think that that means you failed the test or anything. It certainly does not. It just means that you're, in a field where you are a unique person, or, you're looking at jobs where you might bring something unique to the table. Perhaps you're a woman in engineering, for example, where you're working amongst a lot of men who think differently than you do. But at the same time, you bring a lot to that environment. So I don't know, if you get time, take a look at this and you'll get, I think, this presentation as well. This is also the Myers-Briggs test. It's also on Google. And, if you Google it, you can look up and take like a free version of it. But it's super interesting. And I think a lot of us in counseling and helping fields have taken this and, many of us can recite the 4 letters that we are. And it's super interesting to take now versus taking later on down the road, maybe once you're in college and then once you graduate and have your first job. It's just always really interesting to see how this turns out. So this is a really fun one. And then we want to tell you about another one too that is called the Strengths Finder, which I think, yes, Clifton Strengths is what it's been. Of course, it has a new company name. But that being said, the Strengths Finder is one that my staff did personally at Miami when one year as we were kicking off our recruitment cycle and just kind of understanding, for all of us that work in admissions, who had what strengths in what areas. So basically what this exam or this test kind of tells you is, here are areas that you are really strong. Here are your best strengths and best things that are great about you. And these are the areas that you should focus on learning in and focus on growing in and working in. And it's really, again, just a really interesting test that you can take to see what things really rise to the top for you as priorities and what types of things you really think are the most important in your day-to-day life and your day-to-day work and what you're kind of going to be doing. So while both of these tests won't necessarily point to you will be an architect, they won't necessarily tell you exactly what you're going to be doing. They will give you an idea about careers that could be interesting to you, about fields that could really be a good match with you. Much like choosing a college, it will be looking for something that might be a good fit for you. It's not to say it's the perfect fit, but it's something to, to help you learn more about yourself, help you grow as an individual, and help you better understand where you might fit, someday as you're pursuing careers.
All right. So you don't necessarily have to know what you want to major in when you go to college. That's the beauty of the undecided major, which is the most popular major for incoming freshmen. So a lot of most schools will give you the opportunity to select this on your application. At my school, the University of Pittsburgh, every student except a nursing student is technically undecided their freshman year. So whether you choose to be undecided or even if you do come in with a major, I came in with a psychology major, but I definitely didn't know that that's what I wanted to do. I just felt pressure to tell my friends and my parents and my family what I was going to study, and I lasted a semester in psychology classes and decided it wasn't for me. So that's just kind of an example of when to apply as undecided. You haven't figured out what you wanted to study, or maybe you have several different interests and you're not exactly sure which one is going to be the best fit for you. I'll talk about this in the next slide, but it's just a time if you are undecided to to take several different classes that might interest you as possible majors, and then do some self-reflection, talk to your academic advisor, and figure out which major might be a best fit for you. Be sure any of the colleges you're applying to, like what the process looks like in regards to coming in as an undecided major, if they have special programming to help you explore possible majors, or if you come in and declare a major, but ultimately your later your freshman year or your sophomore year, you decide you want to study something else. What does that process look like if you need to switch your major? So as I was referring to, we're going to call this exploration process the freshman experiment. And I think most people go through this. Most people change their major at least once, if not several times. So the freshman experiment in the college world is just really taking at least that first year to figure out who you are, who you want to be, what interests you. So we'd encourage you to take, even if you do think you know what major you want to do, take a class, a lower level class within that major, but also take classes in other departments that interest you. I'd also encourage you to get involved in different student organizations or clubs on campus, or just find different activities that might spark your interest. For me personally, like I said, I thought I wanted to be a psychology major, but in the back of my mind in high school, I was on the high school newspaper. So I took, a lower level communications class and found out that's really the direction I wanted to go. And I think a lot of us would have to agree, academics in your major are definitely a big component of figuring out who you want to be. And you might need that degree to get ultimately get a job. But for me personally, it was what I chose to get involved with outside of the classroom and the experiences I had that ultimately led me to wanting to get involved in, higher education and working with students and helping them find the best fit for them academically.
So we've been talking about this looking forward since we started. So right now, as a senior or a junior in high school, looking forward, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Maybe we can try looking at it from a different direction. So if you have a goal in mind, say you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, say you want to be a teacher, or you have a certain career goal in mind, start there and work your way backwards. You may think, okay, what type of schooling have they had to do? Have they had to have certain types of internships? Have they had to have a series of jobs that have built up to this goal that I have? Picture that and then start working that way back, and you'll start to begin to figure out how to achieve the goal that you've set in front of you. And there may not be a straight path to the goal that you have in mind. So there could be 10 different ways to get to the end goal in sight. Not everybody who wants to become a reporter and work in broadcast television has gone to college and become a broadcast and digital television major. Okay, some of them did their own TV show when they were in college because they thought it was cool and they wanted to, just do it as something fun, and it ended up turning into a career. Not everyone who became a teacher started out in that field. Maybe they just had something else that they really enjoyed in undergrad and had a career, and then as time went on, they decided, you know what? I really want to teach, and I think that's something that's worth my time, and they circled back to that, and that's quite all right too. So there are, wrong way. There's a lot that you can do research-wise right now to start figuring out what some of the steps you can take are. Talk to people who are currently in the industry or in the job that you're looking to get into. Ask them how they got to the point where they are now. I'm sure you're going to hear about 10 different stories with 10 different ways that someone got to the job that you want. Start doing internet searches. It's a great way to kind of get the ball rolling and get a feeler out there to see what you actually need to have. Is there a skill set? Is there a certain degree that you might need? Is there, an experience that future employers would like you to have. These are all things that an internet search can help you with. And then find out what your role model studied in college. So if there's someone that you look up to, someone that you think, wow, they do a really good job at, this job that I want to have myself, start looking to see what they themselves have done. And if you know them, ask them, how did you get there? What are some of the things that you value in your experience that you think helped you obtain this career, this goal that I have? Now, also, look at college and university websites. We have a lot of information there for you. And on most of our websites within the major profile, so each academic major will have its webpage and it'll talk about things. We talk about course descriptions and do the titles sound interesting in the classes that you're going to have to take? How specialized is this major? Is it really very narrow and it has basically one or two outcomes in the career that it leads to? Or is it a bit more wide open and you can see a variety of different careers rising from this? Is the major interdisciplinary? Are you able to study and do and act upon more things? Many major profiles will also list careers in there. So students that have gone through this career process in the past, this college process in the past and taken these classes, where did they end up? What are they doing with their degrees now? It's pretty interesting to look at that and see what some of the most recent alumni are doing. And then also talk to some of the professors in the field. They know all the students that have gone through their programs, and they keep in touch with many of them in the first few years after they graduate. And they're a great resource for asking questions like this of. And then also, do you see yourself in one of the careers that's listed out on these web pages? Does it sound interesting to you? Don't get hung up on the title of the major, because every single school is different though. One school may say, this is a general business major. Some may break it down into marketing and management and real estate. And, it just kind of depends on how the school labels their majors. It's pretty much the same thing when you do that. And it's giving you the same base of education. So don't be scared by the titles that some of these majors are. Do your research and see what is involved, and then see where it has led others.
I think, guys, as I listen to this, it makes me think I should have done this workshop before I went to college and chose my major. But thinking of some examples, and we want to share with you a couple, if you study political communications, which could be called, as April mentioned just a second ago, political science somewhere else, or political anything. You could be so many different things, and what an interesting time, to be thinking about that in the world today as we approach an election. And, see people that are campaign managers, speechwriters, legislators, working in the House, working in the Senate, working your way up. Likewise, if you study information management, my gosh, the possibilities are endless. You can be in web design, you can be overseeing a network or analyzing the data that comes into a network. I'll give you my own example too, which is just that I was a communications major, and as April mentioned on the previous slide, it was a very open-ended major. To me, it didn't narrow in my search at all. It just kind of said, I've got a lot of possibilities when I graduate. And because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, that seemed like the best choice, because it would really allow me a lot of different career paths when I graduated, depending on what I was feeling at the time. Oh, go ahead, Betsy.
All right. So in addition to using college and university websites, there's a lot of other great resources out there for you, and definitely people resources. It's great to talk to other humans instead of just, relying on a website for your primary, as your primary resource. So you can always talk to your counselor, whether that's your general counselor at your high school or a college counselor. Both people would have different viewpoints and probably know you a little bit differently. A lot of the college counselors will have a wealth of knowledge about different universities and what their programs look like, but also might be able to give you a little guidance after having a discussion with you and picking your brain as to what might be some great majors or career options for you. You can also use college search tools like the Naviance system to help you narrow down your search. And then lastly, why the three of us are here tonight. We're college admission representatives, and we all work at different schools where things look and work a little bit differently, but any college admission representative is here to assist you through that process and answer any questions you might have. We're at college fairs, which are of course virtual this year. We're doing panel presentations like this tonight on a specific topic. Some of us are attending virtual high school visits, so that's a great opportunity to connect on a more one-on-one basis as well. And then also, oh, sorry, that's you, April.
All good. So there are many resources on campus that you guys can take advantage of. When you come to a college or university, wherever you've chosen to go, talk to some of these people. So the academic advisors, they're there to walk you through all the steps of signing up for your classes, talking about your future goals, tweaking what your schedule looks like in order to accommodate maybe a new minor or a class you would like to take because it sounds interesting. So they can help you in that planning phase of how do I get to where I want to go. College recorders, peer advisors, track advisors, all of these people are kind of doing similar jobs where they're really helping kind of smooth out the path in front of you towards the goal that you would like to get to. Faculty, I mentioned them earlier, are an amazing resource when it comes to asking questions about careers that students have had after they've gone through their program. Many of the faculty have been teaching a long time, so they know many students and are have kept in touch, and they know where they've gone. And as useful it is for you to know about future careers, it's also a networking opportunity. So these professors can help connect you maybe to some of the alums in the industries that you're looking to get into, whether that means they're going to give you some advice, maybe talk about internships or possible job opportunities at the end. It's a good path to follow through with as well. Teaching assistants kind of fall with the faculty, where they are graduate level students and they're coming in and they're helping teach. They also know plenty of people who've gone through the path ahead of you. Internship supervisors and the Career Center, I mean, this is their bread and butter. They are there to help you through this process. Again, talking about here are some pathways that you could take. If you major in this, here are 10 ideas that come to mind as possible careers. So keep talking to the people around you as you're going through, and don't forget about talking to your fellow classmates as well, because maybe they're coming in with an idea or something that they'd like to do, and they have their own way of getting there. So they may have an idea that you hadn't thought about yet.
So next steps, next things to think about as you are moving forward. Maybe you have a major in mind, or maybe you have 3 or 4 majors in mind, and now you're kind of wondering, well, how do I approach this? Of course, stay open-minded, stay open to new ideas, stay open to the idea that just because you have a major in mind right now doesn't mean it has to stay that way. I think a lot of us could point to statistics that show that students on our campus do typically change their major 1 or 2 times. If you're like me, 4 times before you graduate, and still get out of there in 4 years, but just kind of fine tuning that long-term plan. Be curious, be open to new ideas. Maybe you think you want to go to medical school, so you're thinking biology is the only route. Well, maybe you haven't thought about psychology or neuroscience or other areas that could lead you down that path, but also allow you to explore other areas. Think about things not only as a major, but adding in minors or adding in co-majors or adding in other areas you're interested in addition to a major. So you don't just have to pick one thing, you have to pick a few things and make them work together. And then of course, be willing to take courses outside of your comfort zone. Think about courses that maybe sound interesting, maybe a little scary, but at the same time, interesting and engaging. And especially, I don't know if April or Betsy ever did this, but I would hear about, when I was in school, a good professor on campus. And I would be like, well, that's not really a field I'm interested in, but, you know, that'll meet this requirement or this requirement, because there are a bunch of different, you know, liberal arts requirements and things. And so sometimes you end up taking a class because a professor sounds cool, and all of a sudden, you know, you're open to a new idea or a new, you know, area that you have not considered before. So there are definitely, you know, the possibilities are endless. And I think not only keeping an open mind when it comes to determining a major, but then also, you know, just because you've declared one, it can change. You know, you can change your mind, and that's okay. And I think sometimes students who are open to changing and open to, you know, fine tuning the process tend to graduate and go on thinking like, yeah, I made the best of it. So moving on.
All right. Well, you know, Heather and April and myself really appreciate you taking time out of your evening to spend time with us and learn a little bit more about choosing your major. But I think a lot of what we've also talked about can apply to choosing the right college. A lot of it is about fit, and even, you know, specific majors look different at different universities. That it's just incredible how much, you know, one major a math major or something could look different at each of our schools. So as you can see, we all work at different universities, similar in many ways, but different in a lot of ways as well. And tonight's not necessarily about questions that have to deal specifically with our university, but just about the process. But if you do have questions about our universities, I'm sure we'd be happy to answer them. You'll see all of our contact information on the screen. And if you do have questions at some point, obviously it's recorded, so you could go back and listen for that. But we'll take any questions, and I see we have one come through. So Heather, do you want to moderate this a little bit?
I think this is a great question. Does it cost more to double major or to minor? Do you have to add in to that? And the answer is typically no, it does not. You know, when you're building your degree plan, and you typically do this with an advisor once you're a student on a college or university campus, oftentimes there are a range of classes that you can take each semester, which ends up being typically between like 3 and 5 classes each semester. And with that, advisors know how to work it. They know how to build a degree plan that will, you know, incorporate maybe a biology major and a neuroscience minor, or maybe a pre-med focus in there somewhere. But no, it definitely does not cost more. All of that. And I think the most successful students are those who learn to pack as much into the 4 years as they possibly can within that one price and make it work. So
I was going to say, get the most bang for your buck. And if you're coming in with like some AP credits or dual enrollment classes, like that's an excellent way to, you know, to add on additional fields of study.
Now, I am going to mention that there are some majors where it is more difficult to double major. So things like performance majors, where they're going to be rehearsing all the time, they have performances to do. It may be more difficult to do a double major with the schedule that a performance major has. This is a conversation that you should have early on with your academic advisor and say, you know, I'm a performance major. I'm interested in these other courses. How can I fit these in, or can I fit these in the 4 years that I would traditionally take? And also be aware that there can be one or some majors that may be 5-year majors. So those, you know, they will have listed out on the website and indicate that they're 5-year majors, but it's something to look at as you're going through. And sometimes you can even, I know I'm talking a lot here, but sometimes you can even add an accelerated master's degree and take 1 more year, get that master's, and graduate in 5. So there's a lot of options ahead of you as you look at your career path and your major, and the things that are, you know, things that you can do to help you get ahead in those careers. And I see some other questions coming through, so we'll let you go with that.
Yeah, so another one is, would double majoring overload me on work? So I don't think necessarily. I think it, you know, kind of depends on the demand of the major. Like my one college roommate was a journalism major and an English English writing major, and that was a lot to handle. So, you know, some students want to really load up on something they're really interested in and really good at, but it might require a lot more time from you outside of the classroom. And some people want something creative and something a little bit more like analytical. But I don't think, necessarily, I would say a lot of students do double major, have a combination of majors, minors, certificates, and they all do just fine. Don't feel exhausted or drained.
Yep, I think minors come into play a lot with us. I mean, at Miami, we typically see a student has one major and then like 2 or 3 minors because they have other areas they're interested in, but they're not quite ready to commit more than 4 years. They want to wrap things up in 4 years still, and so the minors make more sense. And then creative arts wise, we see a lot of students that get involved with theater or music, maybe not as a major, but as just an extracurricular interest. So because they really want to work in that field, but they don't have time to build it into their degree plan. So they say, okay, I'm just going to do a lot of theater, and have an arts management major and then make it work. So yeah, there's creative ways to do it. I think to someone's point earlier, work with advisors. If you know that you want to study 2 separate areas on day 1 that you come into the campus, talk to an advisor and say, look, this is what I want to do. Talk to me about how, because advisors are good. They know what they're doing, but on the flip side, you're not necessarily, the best person to figure out the plan. It's like building a puzzle, and you have to work together with them.
And don't forget, if you're coming in with AP credits, IB credits, it's going to loosen up your class schedule. So you do have more time to maybe add a second major, add a minor or 2, or a certificate. So that it does add flexibility.
Yeah. Also think about, if you're home in the summer and you live near a community college or a nearby, some type of a school where you could take a class or 2 and knock something out of the way, you can always do that too and transfer it back in. Let's see. So I'm sorry, I'm looking through a lot of these different questions here.
Do either of you know of a find your major sort of quiz? No. I don't off the top of my head. I'm sure there is something out there if you Google it, but there's probably a lot of different ones.
I haven't seen anything specifically about it. And like we'd said earlier, it'll vary at different schools based on what the majors are called. Every school calls management something different, so you never really know. A student asked, she mentioned she wanted to be a veterinary, she wanted to go into veterinary medicine, and is zoology the right major? If anyone's thinking about veterinary medicine, zoology is a great major for that. Likewise, biology can tend to work pretty well too. But yeah, a science major typically works well there. So this is a great question. Someone asked about, in the way that colleges label their majors, are the curriculums usually different if a major is labeled differently? I think colleges would like you to think that yes, their curriculums are all very different and unique and extremely special. And I'm sure that they are. There are certain distinguishing qualities for each college's major or curriculum or core curriculum or, liberal arts curriculum or whatever it is. Is it going to be kind of similar? Probably, but I think every college probably has some distinguishing features that maybe makes their management major different. I bet the 3 of us could go through and, talk about the differences, maybe not in detail, but of all of ours, and what makes us each unique. And I think that's where your college search comes into play, and where you go and you visit, if you're thinking management, a variety of business schools, and you kind of see, how big are they? What classes do they offer? What does their curriculum look like? You get really in depth on that stuff. I would always caution you not to overthink it and just almost kind of go with your gut with what feels the best, because you really can get very, very detailed about that kind of a thing too.
This question, when do most people choose their major, before high school or what year in college? I think you could have a thought in high school and you could be spot on. I think at most schools, you have to choose by your junior year. At least that's the case at Pitt. Your last 2 years will be really spent knee deep in your major. Your first 2 years, whether you think so or not, is really intended for you to explore and get that core curriculum out of the way and just get your feet wet a little bit in major classes before really diving into it.
And you may want to pay attention to some of the required courses. There may be a certain sequence that you have to take it in. And so paying attention to when these courses are offered. Are they only offered in the fall? Are they only offered in the spring? That will also kind of determine when you have to make up your mind by. Because if you start your sophomore year and you don't take a required class and you decide, halfway through, oh, I'm this major now you have to wait till the next fall to commit to that new path. So
Yeah.
kind of looking ahead at some of these things might help you out in that respect.
Mhm.
I think we have about 5 minutes left, so if we want to breeze through some of these questions, Heather, if you want to take the next one.
Sure. I was just going to say there are a lot of questions asking about specific majors, like what can I do with this, or what should I major in if I want to do this? And again, I would recommend that you guys check out like a Myers-Briggs or a StrengthsFinder type thing to see what, you know, if I major in history, what can I do, you know, or likewise, if I go into in this field, you know, what are some typical jobs in this field? Because I think those tend to be really, really helpful. Another person is asking about, I'm sorry, I lost this one. How can I meet people in my area of interest to get advice? Would either of you, like April, do you want to tackle that?
Sure. So I guess I'm wondering if this is like during high school or if it's in college. During high school, it's a little bit harder. Maybe talk to your college counselor, your school counselor, talk to your parents or your family members, your neighbors, because they're all going to have connections in the different, you know, careers and things like that, that they can, maybe if they don't know it themselves, they can connect you with someone who does. Now, once you enter college, finding that out becomes a little bit simpler as you're talking to faculty members, to advisors, to people who deal with this all the time.
I would say one other question, and I'm going to kind of generalize your question here, but this student asked, if I'm pretty sure I want to go into engineering or computer science, but I'm not sure specifically, should I still apply undecided? And I think every college sometimes has a different strategy on how you should apply. Number one, if you have a major interest. Number two, if you have two major interests. I hate to say it depends. I hate that answer, but it does kind of depend on the college. And so I would encourage any of you asking questions if you are thinking about majors that are sometimes a little bit more selective, engineering, business, nursing, physical therapy, those types of majors where you know it might be a little harder to get in. I'd encourage you to reach out to your colleges or to your admission counselors like myself, April, Betsy, just to see what they recommend, you know, to see if they think, I mean, at Miami, I would say, oh yeah, apply to the business school, because even if you don't get in, it doesn't hurt you. You can still get into Miami overall. But I promise that policy is different at every institution. So you want to check with your admission people or with the university website and just see what is the best approach. If I'm unsure, or if I'm thinking maybe this, there's probably a different answer for every school.
Yeah, and I would add, kind of going back to earlier in the presentation, you know, let's say you decide you want to apply to engineering, but ultimately after you take your first semester of classes, decide this isn't for me. I would ask, you know, in the admissions process, how difficult is it to transfer into another program? How many spots are there? You know, a certain number of spots available. I think especially specifically with computer science and engineering, that's a common question, and that might be a little tricky at certain schools.
Yes.
I thought there was a fun question. I didn't know if two of you knew what your Myers-Briggs are. I know mine's INFJ, so a little more of like the reserved side, like caring. So it's interesting to be in, you know, as Heather had mentioned, like don't let these tests pigeonhole you, because as someone who is a little bit more reserved, you wouldn't think I would be in this field, but I really, you know, the caring side, I really enjoy working with students and families and helping them through this process.
I was very similar. I was an INFP. So again, reserved. When I took like a career test back when I was in high school, it told me I should be a bookkeeper, which is totally not me. You know, and I am quiet. I'm reserved most of the time. It's not my thing to go and, you know, shake hands and meet people, but I love this job. I love meeting students.
That's what you do.
Yes. So it's just surprising. Like I took that test and I went, it doesn't sound right. This is what I want to do.
Right. I do not remember my Myers-Briggs. I took it in graduate school, which was a very, very long time ago. And what I'm wondering is I'm dying to take it now, because I just feel like at different points in your life, you probably have different thoughts or feelings or different things. So nerdy as I am, I'm going to go back and play around with that spreadsheet that we showed you guys to see where I fit in, because I just feel like it evolves over time as you grow and change. And you know, life happens. So very interesting. I think we can wrap up. I don't want us to just get cut off.
I say overall with like the, you know, applying undecided, if you're not sure, I think at most schools, it's not going to hurt you. At least it should not hurt you. So I wouldn't worry about that. Sometimes I think there's just pressure to choose something. So
right. And I would say for the students who declare a major, don't be afraid to change. You know, I think some students are like, okay, I'm picking a major, and they settle in, and then, you know, they're scared to get out of it. It's fine to change too.
Sorry to cut in, but
No,
our
you're
time is up. So thank you so much for joining us. Participants, when you close this window, there's going to be a link to a real quick 4-question survey. We'd appreciate any feedback you can provide. Also, this is one of the many sessions being hosted, so be sure to sign up for more sessions at IACAC.org. And in about a week, you'll be able to find this session's recording as well as all the other session recordings at IACAC.org. So thank you, panelists. Thank you, participants, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you.